Hey, back by popular demand, it's Jessie Coffield, first of her name, queen of the mini-wheats, taker of naps. Welcome back from your journey, milady. Welcome back.
I just want to say thank you so much for having me back.
Do you remember what this show is called?
The DraftKings show, right?
Yep. The
Sweat.
Do you
Just
remember
kidding.
what my name is?
I could never forget Emerson Lotzia.
Yep.
Emerson Matthew Lotzia Jr., if we're being serious.
Do you remember what we do here?
How could I forget what we do here? We talk sports, we talk betting, we talk daily fantasy. And also, how could I forget these four gentlemen?
Yes.
Our NFL panel tonight. DraftKings contributors Reed Fowler, Jeff Ulrich, and Julian Edlow. And of course, Jerry Donabedian of RotoWire. Gentlemen, it's NFL high or low. So are the following spreads for week 6 too high or too low?
I will say this.
It.
I closed out the show last night and I mentioned, hey, Jessie's back. She's going to be in a great mood. Jeff got the last words in. He goes, thank God.
Yeah, thank God, because I did hear that things have been going off the rails a little bit here. Mostly, there's no one here to contain.
All right, here we go. Julian, I'll start with you. The Eagles are 3-point road underdogs against the Vikings. Is that spread too high or too low?
I think the spread is right around where it should be, but I'll say that it's a little bit too low, and the Eagles should have this under 3, around 2.5 or so. Both of these teams beat up on the bad New York teams last week. The Eagles maybe getting a little bit too much love because 2 of those touchdowns came on the defensive side. They didn't perform that well offensively against the Jets, but Minnesota, Kirk Cousins' record against good teams is just terrible. He beats up on the bad teams and covers against them, as he did against the Giants last week, and is just unable to do it when it's good teams. The Eagles have a very good secondary. That's the only thing that would be a cause for concern here. But I think the Eagles at +3 is probably the right side of this one. Maybe even look at the money line.
Reed, Julian brings up a good point. Kirk Cousins struggles to beat teams with a winning record.
Thank you, Emerson Lotzia. Pleasure to be here.
No problem.
I think that's how you attack the Eagles, though, to sort of counteract what Julian was saying. It's their secondary, right? You can't really run on Philadelphia. They have a really strong front seven. And if you look at Minnesota, and this is why they potentially paid this guy $84 million guaranteed, is that in some cases, especially to Adam Thielen, he can actually pass like an NFL quarterback. Minnesota's defense at home is really strong. 13.5 points in the last 2 games that they've given up. It's their games at home, and that's, again, really strong. Look at Philadelphia. They've recommitted to the run with Jordan Howard. It's no longer Miles Sanders, and I think you have to, if you're Philadelphia, you have to run the ball strong against the Minnesota team, and that's going to be tough. So I'm going to say this is a little too high. I like Minnesota in this one, but it's going to be a good matchup.
Who do you like, Jeffrey?
I think this line is a little bit too big in favor of the Vikings. I think that this should be closer to a pick 'em. Even maybe just like the Eagles, a small favorite. I mean, who have the Vikings beat? They've beat up on weak teams. Giants, even the Raiders. I know the Raiders are okay, but I mean, they have no quality wins. The Falcons are terrible. That's the other team they beat. They got pretty much blown out in the first half by the Green Bay Packers. And I know they came back and made that game close, but it really shouldn't have been close. The Eagles went into Green Bay and beat them on the road. I mean, that is a very quality win. Both of these teams are funnel defenses, essentially. And you look at the 2 quarterbacks, I'm much more confident in Carson Wentz, Zach Ertz, Alshon Jeffrey going in there and being able to put up some points. And I am with Kirk Cousins. Eagles have a good front seven. I think they're going to be able to get some pressure, and I think you're going to see bad Cousins show up again.
Jerry, should this be closer to a pick'em?
Yeah, I'm right there with Jeff. I was expecting this to be a pick'em. And as a pick'em, I would take the Eagles. So definitely I like the money line here. You look at the Eagles, I mean, they're 4th in DVOA right now. And with all the injuries they've had, they might be an even stronger team than that. We saw that the 2 losses they had were the weeks where they didn't have Jeffrey, didn't have Jackson, didn't have Goddard. They've got all of them back besides Jackson now. And really just from like a matchup perspective, looking on the smaller scale, like the Eagles have a dominant run defense. We know that's what the Vikings want to do. Only 2 teams have gotten more hits on quarterbacks this season than the Eagles. We know what happens to Kirk Cousins when you get pressure on him. So, yeah, the Eagles do have that weak secondary, and I think Thielen and Diggs might be able to do some work on them. But ultimately, it's a tough spot for Dalvin Cook. It's a tough spot for Kirk Cousins, and I think that Carson Wentz is going to have more luck using those 2 tight end formations with Goddard and Ertz, putting some pressure on the Minnesota linebackers in coverage. I think the Eagles just, really, really match up well with the Vikings, even if the teams are kind of similar in terms of strength.
The Chiefs are 4.5-point favorites over the Texans in KC. Too high or too low, Reed? I mean, KC coming off the L from Indy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this is more recency bias than anything with both of these teams. We look at Kansas City. I think when you look at Patrick Mahomes and what happened, he was really strapped in that game with that ankle injury. But I mean, these guys are at home. Did we forget that Houston only put up 10 points the week before at home? All of a sudden they play, we just talked about the Falcons, how bad that team is, and especially how bad that defense is. Look, I know Houston can put up points. I know they have some really good receivers, and so does Kansas City. If Tyreek Hill is back and they can open the field more with this guy, again, this is another spot where you attack this secondary. I think this is too low. I think Kansas City at home in Arrowhead is almost a touchdown favorite in terms of whoever they play. So I think this is a little too low.
Jerry, do you agree? Do you think it's too low? I mean, we know Mahomes tweaked his ankle. Sammy Watkins left the game with a quad injury. Like, are people just scared because of injuries?
Yeah, I think Reed hit it right on the head. Recency bias. That was the first thing that came to my mind when I saw the line. And really the only second thing that gave me any pause was Mahomes with the ankle. But he was able to play through it and still looked okay against the Colts. Yeah, I think it's just like a little bit of a case of recency bias where, not to totally discount what happened last week, it did show us some potential issues with the Chiefs and some, what the Houston offense can be if Bill O'Brien calls a good game and they get to play the Falcons every week, which they don't. The Chiefs' pass defense has actually been a little better than it was last season. So yeah, I think this should be. I don't think it should be a full touchdown on the line, but I think I was expecting it to be 6.5 here. So with Mahomes' ankle, I can understand it, but I still lean toward the Chiefs definitely.
Jeff, too high or too low? These guys think it's just recency bias. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this line is too low. Look, the Chiefs' offense can go through these lulls, especially with Tyreek Hill out, where if they're just not firing on all cylinders, their defense isn't suffocating enough, where they're going to be able to hold an offense like Houston to low enough points where they're going to be able to cover the spread. But at the same time, they still have playmakers even without Tyreek Hill in there. I think another week with Byron Pringle and Mecole Hardman just getting a little bit more integrated with Patrick Mahomes, who seems to be fine on his ankle. And I do think that a lot of where this line started has to do with Mahomes and his ankle. I mean, I think some people were actually questioning if he was going to be able to play this week. He seems like he's going to be fine. I think you'll see this line rise as the week goes on. Kansas City could end up being a bit of a public bet this week, but I don't really care. I just do not believe in the Texans as a team just being able to come into Arrowhead and being able to necessarily punch Kansas City in the mouth. I think Jerry made a good point. Their defense isn't that bad. They haven't gotten a ton of pressure, but Houston features one of the worst O-lines in the league, and Atlanta got no pressure last week. Kansas City will get more pressure, and I think that will be enough for Kansas City to cover this. So I think this line is too low right now.
4.5-point favorites. That's in favor of the Chiefs over the Texans. Jules, do you agree with these guys? Is it just too low?
I do. It probably should be about 6, but let me try and make the case for the Texans since we already got 3 good arguments for the Chiefs. If the Texans were smart, they could come in here and cover this spread. Look at what the Colts did last week to win outright in a primetime game at Arrowhead. They ran the ball. They kept the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands. Houston should be able to do that in theory, but their secondary just isn't good enough to stop Mahomes. Their offensive line isn't good enough to protect Watson to make all the throws he's going to need to make to keep up with Mahomes and that offense. So while the Kansas City defense definitely has some suspect spots, I think it's going to be enough to get by Houston just because Houston has more holes and Mahomes is better than Watson.
Jeffrey, the 49ers are undefeated, in case you forgot, but are still 3.5-point dogs against the Rams. Too high or too low?
I definitely did not forget because I was on Cleveland +5 for that game.
Oh, yeah.
Same
Z's. Don't
so
say same
it's fresh in my mind
Same
that the
Z's.
49ers are undefeated. I think this line is a tiny bit too big. I feel like San Francisco should probably be +3, maybe even +2.5. These teams are really close. Look, I know the Rams have lost 2 in a row, and they haven't looked the greatest, but let's not forget. They should have won that game against Seattle. Their kicker missed by about that much for my second little itsy-bitsy thing of the segment. But so what I'm trying to say is I think these teams are pretty close. I know San Francisco's coming off the decimation of Cleveland, but the Rams are a solid team all around. And Sean McVay is definitely going to game plan something to try and keep Jared Goff out of that pressure. So I think this line is just about correct. 3.5, I would probably lean San Francisco, but this is kind of a game I'm just more excited to watch, and I don't really necessarily have a huge lean because I think these teams are really close, and I think it's going to be a close game.
Jules, Kyle Shanahan, since he was hired in 2017, really struggled against in-division opponents.
Yeah, so my mindset here is that I think that this spread, after what we saw Monday night, had the potential to be a lot closer to a pick'em. And for the fact that it's not makes me think that this is an appropriate spread for the Rams. It should be even bigger. It was 4 before the Monday Night Football game, and then after we saw the 49ers absolutely dominate, it reopens at 3.5. I think that means that they're trying to get people to take the San Francisco side of this, whereas the Rams will probably work out to be the right side. The Rams are desperate, coming off consecutive losses. They need to get this win at home. San Francisco has some injuries. They're going to be without their fullback that was so integral in the running game. They're going to be missing a body on the offensive line in this game. I just think when it comes down to it, and then the kicking, like we leave out the kicking, and Jeff was talking about it because San Francisco was so dominating in that Monday night game. Now things are going to be a lot tighter in LA against a really good team. A couple of mishaps on special teams could definitely blow this up into a 7-10 point game. I really like the Rams in this spot.
I hate it when Julie makes good points, but it's a really good point about the special teams and a line is close. It is.
Yeah.
Good enough to change your lean from the San Francisco side?
I wasn't leaning towards San Francisco. I just felt like the line should be around +3. Like I said,
Okay.
I'm not.
Fair enough.
Jerry, McVay and the Rams, 10-3 straight up against NFC West teams here in their past 13.
Yeah, my instinct actually was that this line was kind of insulting to the 49ers. Like they've been the better team this year. They've won all 4 of their games easily. But yeah, you look at some of the other stuff. The special teams thing is a great point. Like they've got a great kicker, but they can't get the ball down properly for him right now. And they've got both starting tackles are going to be out with injury, not just this week, but beyond. And then they're one of 2 teams, along with the Patriots, who actually cares when their fullback's out with an injury, which they're dealing with now. So I think it's going to be a little bit tougher for Brady and Coleman. You look at they're actually playing a good team for the first time this year, so Garoppolo is going to have to do something, which really he hasn't. They've been able to just rely on the running game, a little bit of play action. I think Garoppolo is going to be in more situations this game where they know he's throwing, like third down and medium type situations that they've really avoided. So yeah, I think all in all, I think it's a fair line. I don't have a strong opinion on it, but I did kind of talk myself off that initial like, oh man, like 49ers +3.5, that's a huge steal. I think now I'm just kind of neutral on it.
Fowler, 6-1 against the spread. The Rams are in their past 7 games.
Yeah, this is a really good one. I think the guys made really good points. It's going to be interesting to watch. The Rams defense was really good to begin with. Now you got 42.5 points given up in the last 2 games. That's suspect. Going back to Julian's, good point. I guess we got to point it out that the special teams for the San Francisco side, it's a new snapper and a new holder. They were both rookies in terms of what they were doing for Robbie Gould, and that's why he really wasn't connecting. If you watch that game, they just didn't have the timing down. So that is a point. I can't believe that Julian made these really good points because he does no research.
I made multiple good points in that segment. You guys are just harping on the special teams.
So it's a good one because that's what it comes down to. It's either the last position, and at 3.5, this is a sharp number. So I'm kind of with Jeff here, leaning a little bit if he kind of stays with his initial point of leaning with San Francisco. I like it a little bit, but in terms of this defense, if they find something where Marcus Peters and Aqib Talib can get back to where they were in the first part of the first 2 games, I think this goes to the Rams. But initially, right now, I like San Francisco getting points.
Good stuff, guys. Coming up, we'll look at some season-long prop bets, plus a few for the weekend ahead. MLB Showdown picks are next, right after Adam Kaufman's conversation with Nick Eatman.
Okay, I promise the sky is not falling, but the Cowboys have lost 2 straight after a perfect 3-0 start. Dallas now tied with Philadelphia atop the NFC East, and this man right here, he knows all about it. Adam Kaufman with Cowboys team reporter Nick Eatman. You can get him on Twitter at Nick Eatman. Easy to remember. Nick, any reason to panic here?
No, I don't think there's reason to panic. I mean, you're only 5 games in, but there's reason to be concerned. There's reason to feel like this team maybe isn't as good as everyone thought they were. And it's still early. And I'm at the point where I don't really know what to think of this team yet. Usually after 5 games, you'd have a good idea. But, they've beaten up 3 teams that aren't playing very well right now, and they've lost to two teams that are pretty good. So, where do they fit in all this? Only time will tell. But right now, I think it's safe to say it's a little bit disappointing considering how they started.
Well, to that point, I mean, wins over the Giants when they were truly hapless, the Redskins, the Dolphins, who's everybody's punching bag, and of course, as you said, losses to a couple of good clubs in the Packers and the Saints. So it has created that buzz of who is this team really. And with the Jets this weekend, you probably won't get any better indication, right? I mean, what would that necessarily tell you? Even if the Cowboys go out and just shellac New York, does that tell you anything you need to know, or do you need a win against a good team?
Well, I mean, you could make the case for both. I mean, yeah, you need for your confidence, you need to be able to win against a good team. But this isn't college football where polls matter and things like that, style points. I mean, you just win games, and eventually you're going to have to beat enough teams to get to the playoffs. I mean, we all know how it works. But from a confidence standpoint, you would like to go out and beat somebody. I don't think they've beaten a quarterback that has won a game this year. Because Eli was the starter for the Giants, and obviously the Redskins and Dolphins haven't won. And even if they beat the Jets, I don't think, Sam Darnold wouldn't have won a game. So, they haven't gone out and beaten very many teams that are successful or a quarterback that's actually been successful this year.
Dak Prescott said after this latest loss, the Cowboys may have gotten a little overconfident after that 3-0 start. Did you see any of that, be it on the field or even just in the players' body language behind the scenes?
It's hard to know what overconfidence looks like. I mean, I think they were ready for the Packers, but they didn't show it. They didn't come out and execute. I mean, these games have been interesting. They've, in my opinion, they've lost both games on the first drive of the game for the offense, and that's obviously rare to do when you play 60 minutes. But I just feel like they've gone along thinking, all right, well, here's a missed opportunity, and here's a missed try here, and here's a missed field goal, and we'll get it back. And before you know it, you're down, and it's too late to get it back. And I think these slow starts, they've been happening all year. It's just that when you're not playing the Giants, Redskins, or Dolphins, you can catch up and win. And, they've really been behind in every game they've played, or at least been down in every game.
Sounds like health is kind of being tested right now, too, in that locker room, whether that's just minor tweaks that are naturally going to come throughout a football season or actual illness. Is there any concern there?
I think that there's been some of that. Like I said last week, when you face the Saints without Drew Brees, or you face the Packers without Devontae Adams, I mean, you're kind of catching a break there. So anything you've got on your end, it's significant. I mean, losing Tyron Smith at left tackle was a big deal, and then Lyle Collins in the right tackle spot later in the game was also tough. And they've had some injuries on the D line that hopefully they can come back for them this week. But I mean, everybody's got some of those. The Cowboys have been minimal with their injuries, but I mean, they've actually faced some teams with a lot more challenging situations going on.
So Jets next in the Meadowlands, so it's an important road test anyway. Sam Darnold's going to start his first game in all likelihood since missing a month with mono. He'll be at least a little rusty or nervous or whatever you want to call it. Is it a perfect bounce-back opportunity for the boys?
It should be. I mean, their defensive line, they have been playing better, and, the Jets have been obviously giving up a bunch of sacks. So that I think it'll be an opportunity for the Cowboys defense to kind of get after them a little bit and get some sacks, maybe some turnovers. And then, on offense, the Jets have had some injuries on their defensive line. So maybe the Cowboys could establish a running game again and kind of get back on all cylinders. And, I think it was unfortunate, they started down 17-0 and really never had a shot to kind of play their game in the second half. But their offense was a reason that they were down, because they were having miscues and stuff like that. But if they can get back and play a balanced game, I think that's where you'll see this offense really, playing well.
And there really is so much talent on that offense. One guy we haven't talked about in a little while because he was out, Michael Gallup. He missed 2 weeks for knee surgery, just arthroscopic obviously, comes back, has a 100-yard performance in that loss. He's on pace for 1,000 yards. We know he's a great fantasy option. We've discussed that. But could his production take away from Amari Cooper's down the road at all? And I realize I'm asking that in the wake of Cooper going for 226 yards.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, maybe when these games get a little bit colder and they're going to rely on Zeke, more in the running game. You wouldn't expect a 200, 100 game, but the fact that you've got these two options, that means that they're going to see a lot of single coverage. So they just can't double team all of them, and Cooper's going to get a little bit more than Gallup. So I think Michael Gallup's going to be a good option because he showed it in the last game. He could be down in catches and yards. I don't even know if he had a catch in the first half. Maybe he did, but it wasn't much. And then then he exploded. He has a long touchdown. He's got that speed. So just like that, he can make a big play for you. So I think he's always going to be a good option for you on in fantasy or on any level.
All right, we've got a dramatic, thick, juicy
Juicies.
NLDS Game 5 heading our way tonight. The Dodgers look for continued postseason success. I can't stop laughing because Julian's laughing behind the camera. Inching closer to a third straight trip to the World Series, while the Nationals aim to get out of the NLDS round for just the second time in franchise history. Good grief.
Can we talk showdown picks now? And can you lock it up for 5 seconds? Good. DraftKings contributors Steve Buchanan and Pierce Dietrich are here. And who are you thinking about putting in your captain spot, Bukes?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a pitcher's duel, unlike what we are seeing right now with the Cardinals game.
Wow, what is going on right now? Dead serious. It's like, 11-0 in the third?
Yeah, it's pretty brutal out there. I imagine paying to go to that game being a Braves fan. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But for me, it's going to be Steven Strasburg. I mean, since he gave up 4 runs to the Reds back on August 14th, he's gone 51 innings, allowing just 10 total runs, 29 hits with a 34.2 K percentage. And quite frankly, he's dominated the Dodgers in the 3 starts that he's had so far this season, including the one already here in this series. This is going to be a pitcher's duel. This is one you're going to want to try to load up on both pitchers. So Strasburg's going to be the one for me.
Bukes, that's great insight. Pierce, is that what you want to do too? Load up on the pitchers?
Yeah, that's probably the wise choice, is to take Buehler. Strasburg's probably the number one option. But if you want to be contrarian, you could consider Justin Turner. And it's not the craziest contrarian in his play. I mean, he's hit home runs in each of the last 2 games. He's one of the best playoff batters probably in baseball right now. And if you look at his last matchup against Strasburg on Friday night, now the basic traditional stats are going to say he went 0 for 3 with a sac fly. But if you look at the advanced stats, the StatCast data, all 3 of those hits, 103 mile per hour exit velocity, 100 mile per hour exit velocity, 97 mile per hour exit velocity. He's seeing the ball well. He's squaring the ball up against Strasburg. If he can get some elevation, he can hit a home run tonight.
Okay, so who do you stack with him? Pierce.
Yeah, it's good to be the same guys that we just talked about. If you don't put the pitchers in the captain spot, then you put the pitchers, both of them, in the other spots. It's going to be Buehler, 6 innings pitched, 1 hit, 8 strikeouts in his matchup against the Nationals a week ago. I would imagine he's going to do the same thing. I'm sure there's some worries that Kershaw could come in and replace him, but I think that's going to motivate Buehler. They have a bit of a rivalry that will definitely push him to extend the game. And then Strasburg's got to pitch this whole game. He cannot turn the game over to the bullpen. That's what makes Steve's pick for captain play a good pick, because he could go 8 innings tonight. Strasburg has to pitch the entire game.
Okay, updated is now 13-0 Cardinals over the Braves.
Oh my
Steve,
God.
Who do you stack with your captain here in this game that is hopefully a lot closer?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Nationals closer here with Daniel Hudson. He hasn't allowed a run since the month of August. Just been absolutely great coming out of the bullpen there. And I think this is going to be a close game. Like, the over-under in this game on the DraftKings Sportsbook is currently at 7. We're not expecting a lot of offense in this game. So with that type of mindset, you would have to think that if the Nationals are going to win this game, if Strasburg is not going to go the whole complete game, which is possible if he does have a good game, but, they're going to get Hudson in there if needed. Wouldn't be surprised if he has to go 2 innings if they need him to. They're going to try to hide this bullpen as much as possible. But unlike the wild card, they can't have Strasburg come out of the bullpen of this game. So they need Strasburg to go as deep as they can, and then they're going to try to close it out with Hudson.
Okay, Steve, where can you find some value here?
Yeah, this is really a hard a game to find some value, because you really like both sides of the pitching option. So I'm going to go with Matt Beaty here, who's batting 5th in the Dodgers lineup. Quite frankly, I'm just looking for somebody who doesn't strike out. Like, I feel like that's your best bet here, and is really not an option to choose from here, but at least he has only 11.5 K percentage against righties, He's got some good pop. He's got a 217 isolated power and a 14.7 home run to fly ball rate. So at least with him, he's cheap enough. He's got some power. I can probably rely on him to not strike out. But again, it's a tall task to ask going up against someone like Steven Strasburg. But for the price that he is, his spot in the lineup, can't beat it.
Pierce, where are you looking for some value?
You can't ask much from some of these value plays, so I will look at the BVP in this situation.
Whoa!
Hernandez has 2 home runs against Steven Strasburg. I don't feel good about it, but it really doesn't matter. You're saving money. You've got to take one of these bats, and if you don't take Beatty, or maybe you probably end up with Beatty and Kike in your lineup. I also like Doolittle here, just a straight savings play. Maybe he gives you an inning, gets you 2 strikeouts, and that's just enough at that low price point.
I haven't heard one of the guys drop BVP in quite some time.
Yeah, I love those stats.
There's a reason.
Yeah.
Because it's my shtick, and no one's supposed to steal it.
Well, would you like to steal Pierce's umpire stats for this game?
Do you have those handy?
No, I actually have.
You just froze up,
Yeah.
but I'm sure what you said was funny. Anyone you're totally fading, Pierce?
I'm not going to play the Nationals bats. I've got some umpire stats, but I don't want to put Steve into a rage, so I'll keep this to myself.
Wow,
Steve. Yeah, the National bats, you can't pay up for the Nationals bats against Kershaw possibly and Buehler and a bullpen that's amazing at home.
Steve, any comment?
You want me to answer the question or say what Pierce just said?
Yes, you can please react to what Pierce just said, then answer the question.
Yeah, nobody cares about the umpire stats, especially this late in the year when, we're trying to get people to get into playoff baseball, but you want to come out with umpire stats. We're trying to keep viewership here. In terms of who I'm fading on this slate, pretty much the top of the lineups on both sides. If you're going to put in both pitchers, there's no point in trying to jam in one of those bats because you're just absolutely desecrating your roster for what you have to build. So I'm kind of going towards the lower end of the lineups, the kind of the 6 through 9 guys, which really isn't all that appealing. But if you want to get both pitchers in there, you can't be spending up in other spots. So going with a lot of the value plays at the lower part of the lineups is what I'm looking at. Fading guys like Trey Turner, Cody Bellinger, things like that. I think you'll get those points from the pitchers, not necessarily the bats.
Steve, are you back in the office this week?
I'll be there Sunday.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we'll be here Sunday too.
I owe him a cupcake.
That's it, though. Okay, that's great.
That's it.
Maybe you could talk about that on your own time. You two are done until tomorrow. For now, here's Pat Mayo with some wide receiver options for Week 6.
I also lost a matchup on Beckham's punt return fumble, so great week for Pat.
Hey, is Beckham even? Well, we'll get to it. I was gonna. We'll say that.
We can do Odell right now.
He's not a wide receiver 1 anymore, right?
No, I have him way down in the rankings this week. Here's the thing, though. The matchups upcoming, the next 4 weeks, are truly horrendous for Odell. And then it kind of flips, and I think he has the easiest wide receiver schedule from there on out. So if you're like a 5-0 team and you don't expect the world from Beckham right away, I think that he's someone who's going to be incredibly valuable to have coming down the stretch for your team, where you could get back to being a wide receiver 1. You're just going to have to wait it out. The problem is if you're 1-4, 2-3, you don't have that luxury because he was probably your first or early second round pick. That your team's probably pretty screwed at this point. So I think it's a very logical trade that if you have Beckham and you're struggling, just go to the guy who's like first or second in the league and just explain to him, look, his season's gonna turn around. He just has a really tough next 4 weeks, and you take 80 cents on the dollar for him because you need to get back into it. I think that's the move you need to take with Odell right now.
That's I'm looking at it right now. That's a long way though. That's week 11. That's a long way coming.
But if you're 5-0 or 4-1, you can absorb that depending on what the person in return would want for Beckham. If you can trade not necessarily a tertiary piece, but something that you find that you can live without, and then have Beckham as your wide receiver 3 or whatever.
Here, I'll throw one at you. And this is my boy. You know that. Would you take DJ Chark or Odell Beckham the rest of the way?
I'd probably take Beckham, but
it's to think about.
It is super close. But I'm factoring in these next 4 matchups for Beckham that just look completely disastrous on paper. Maybe he overcomes it. Maybe they get it figured out. But if I was the team who was way out ahead, that would be the sort of guy that you could probably get for him. That I think if I was 5-0, I would make that swap, and I think if I was 1-4, I would actually make the swap the other way. I'd take DJ Chark for the moment.
Exactly. And that's why I think that Chark and anybody in that similar conversation is a good one. That's why I threw him to you on that, because I'm with you on that. That's a long way because you got the bye mixed in there as well to week 11 to wait for that out. But as you mentioned, it is still Odell Beckham. This is still the team that everybody was super excited for and thought had Super Bowl aspirations before the season. Even if these next 4 weeks, even if only 2 of them are wide receiver 2 value, you're still on the hope that those last couple games, as you mentioned, end up being wide receiver 1 value. You're going to get the better end of it. You just hope that the next 4 games aren't just completely miserable. So that's where I'm with you. 100%. 5-0, 4-1. I make that swap. If you're on the other side, I make the other one. It's just fun to say that DJ Chark's now in the conversation of Odell Beckham.
Yeah, do you worry about Chark at all this week? I guess we should probably wait till we get to wide receivers to discuss this, but I had a bit of hesitation, obviously, with him last week, and that just did not turn out well for me whatsoever. I thought that Dede would end up being better, but Chark just continues to overcome. Good matchup, bad matchup. It really doesn't make a difference, but he probably will draw Marshawn Lattimore this week.
And that's a legitimate concern, which didn't look like it was going to be a concern after the first 3 weeks, is the fact that Marshawn Lattimore has gone right back to being a lockdown corner. And there were some reports that it was actually health related, that he wasn't 100% and battling like a sickness or something for the first couple of weeks. If that's true, that kind of excuses it away. All that being said is he should draw Lattimore for the majority, but it's not going to be 100%. And I think they'll move him around enough to try and get him off him a little bit.
We got the Houston Open teeing off tomorrow in Houston. And here to help you place a few bets on the DK Sportsbook is this DraftKings duo, Reed Fowler and Jeff Ulrich.
What was that so funny?
Should these odds be better or worse?
Jeff, are you there? Jeff.
I'm frozen, but I'm laughing.
I'm laughing on the inside.
All right, everyone, settle down. Let's start with Daniel Berger here. Plus 2,200. Reed?
This is not. These odds should be higher. Plus 2,200. He's the second highest on the card right now. And look, this is a course horse number here. He's done well. I think he's top 5 in strokes gained total since 2015. But his approach shots over the last 6 tournaments, he ranks 90th. And just putting, he's just not doing that well either. So, if you're going to bet this range, go with Henrik, even though he's without his 3-wood. Go with Scotty Scheffler at plus 2,800, but not Berger.
Jeffrey, what do you think?
Houston Open, coming to you from the United States of America. That's what you should have said, Jeff.
America!
Look, yeah, I am in 100% agreement with Reed here. Daniel Berger at 22-1. It just feels like he's getting a little bit too much credit for winning a couple tournaments like a year and a half, 2 years ago. He's played okay. He's been consistent. He's making cuts in these weaker field tournaments, but he's not doing anything spectacular. His strokes gain approach isn't that good. He's consistent off the tee, but he's not really putting that great. He's got the great course history, which is another reason why his number is so low. But it's too low, way too low for me to bet on. There's guys like Keegan Bradley, Harris English at 40-1. Not Berger for me this week.
How about Matt Jones, the golfer, not the DraftKings contributor? He's plus 4,500. What are your thoughts here, Jeff?
Yeah, I think I'd rather bet Berger at 22-1 than Matt Jones at 45-1. Look, he's a past champion of this event, but this is a player who's gone down to the Corn Ferry Tour, back up to he's basically hasn't had a full card for the past 3 years. He's kind of bounced between the minor league tour and the full-time tour. He is kind of back on the full-time tour now, and he started off the season well. You have to admit it, but still 45-1 for a guy who's won once in his career. Has had trouble staying on tour. I think he's just getting too much credit for that win at this event and on this course back in 2014. But actually, take out that win, the rest of his course history at this course hasn't been that great either. So, no, this is, again, you got guys like Keegan Bradley, Cameron Tringali, Kevin Chappell, just players I'd much rather take a shot on at longer odds than Matt Jones at 45-1.
Reed, Matt Jones, plus 4,500.
Allow myself to introduce myself. That's what Julian was thinking. Look, at first glance, this doesn't make sense, right? Like Jeff mentioned it, you don't want to bet Matt Jones at 45-1. I think it was here, too, that he chipped in to beat Kuchar in his only win. So really, when you look at this course, it came down to a playoff with a much better player, Matt Kuchar, back then when he won. And that's where he really gets a lot of his course history from. If you look over the last 12 rounds, though, not that bad. Last season, you had to kind of take it along with this and wait it a little bit. But during the swing season, he's had some decent finishes. So if you want to bet this and you don't like a Keegan at 45-1, or you don't like these other guys like Cameron Tringali at the same number, and you want to play a little bit more course history, and guys here too, especially Australian guys, this is, take it for what it's worth, because it's like not really numerical, but Australian guys have won here the most since 1999, other than Vijay Singh. This country, the countrymen have won here quite a bit, and that's a lot to do with how this style of course plays. There's a lot of wind here, a lot of wind down in Australia, and so if you want to go that angle, you can. Better bets out there like Keegan and like the guys that Jeff mentioned.
Alrighty, a man we talk about every week, Luke List, plus 5,500. Should his odds be better or worse, Reed, coming off this first made cut of this young season?
Yeah, that's exactly right. He missed like 45 cuts in a row before this. I liked Luke List when he was at plus 27,000 a couple of weeks ago or last week, whatever it was, but now he's down to this number. And the reason why this is not a good number and why I think they should be worse or higher is because he did it all with his short game last week. He didn't do it with his usual repertoire, which is ball striking and scoring. He did it with strokes gained around the green and putting. He had probably his best putting tournament and best putting rounds in his entire career. That's not going to happen with Luke List. Course history, he's actually really good here. He's played well at the Shell Houston Open, but this venue, different time in the schedule. It's still at the same place. You don't need to be a bomber at this course, which is what Luke List has done well in his career. So yeah, I get it, but no, don't bet this number.
Yeah, Jeff, Reed mentioned his course history. T3 here in 2017, buddy. So you like these odds?
I mean, I guess they're okay. I know we're letting Mayo write the script for this every week because Luke List is on here every week. But yeah, I mean, Reed hit on the putting and the short game. I mean, he did putt well. He has putted well on Bermuda greens, which is the only thing I'd say. Like if he does putt well, he's obviously got the rest of the game to compete. It's just that his putter rarely ever shows up. So if it shows up in this weaker field, I think these are nearly fair enough odds to take a shot on Luke List. Again, he's not like one of my favorite bets or anything like that, but I don't think this is so egregious that I have to go out there and tell everyone how silly this is, because this field is super weak, and we have seen Luke List pop up at the numerous other events with top fives kind of out of nowhere when he gets the putter rolling. And like I said, it's Bermuda greens, so I would probably rather go down and take a shot on a guy like Lucas Beauregard at 80-1 or Robbie Shelton at just bigger odds, because you're just getting a little bit better bang for your buck with similar type of players. So Luke List, I actually don't hate it this week, but yeah, it's still maybe a little bit too short.
Jeff, is this Beauregard's first tournament after his airplane debacle?
No, that was Thorbjorn Olsen.
That's Olsen.
Yeah. Olsen is in like jail. Like he's not playing.
Sorry, Lucas. Sorry. That's bad.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lucas. You're a good guy.
Can confirm you cannot play in a golf tournament from jail. So, for plus 9,000 odds, you can get Jason Duffner. You picking up what we're putting down, Jeff?
Duffner is the type of player like in this weak field event who could just pop up, but no, I don't think so. He's just been all over the place. Not making cuts in the fall series is not really a good sign considering the weakness of the field. I mean, he does have a T12 at this event, and he is Jason Duffner. Like he's probably one of the most prolific winners in this field outside of Henrik Stenson, just from like a career perspective, obviously with a major, multiple titles. But man, like, I mean, ever since basically even going back to last year, I mean, the consistency, the upside just has not been there with Jason Duffner. So you're really just taking a shot in the dark. I mentioned a few other guys, like younger names like Robbie Shelton. I would probably rather take a shot on here. Guys who are just going to take advantage of this weak field, used to going up against similar type of competition. I'm okay just not really paying attention to Duffner until he shows me a little bit of something, maybe next year.
Reed, you want to be dancing in the dark with Duffner?
No. Like this course, I mean, you like strokes gained putting at this course, right? Not much extremely variant. We talk about it all the time in terms of that stat that you can get on and off with that from day to day with that statistic. So that's kind of where you want Duffner, right? Even though he doesn't show really good putting stats, that's kind of off the tee is kind of his game. And when he wins, he putts lights out. And so that could be him. But at his number, look at another guy in Doc Redman. Doc Redman is the same number. He's second in ball striking over the last 24 rounds. So if you want to attack this higher number and you don't want to go too far into the plus 10,000 range, then Doc Redman over Jason Duffner.
Talk DFS to me, Fowler. Who is your slate-approved pick?
I thought you were just going to say talk DFS to me. Look, it's going to be Scotty Scheffler. This guy's way too good to not win one of these swing season tournaments, so give me Scheffler.
Mr. Ulrich.
Harris English at 8,900, playing super golf, way too cheap in my opinion for this field at 8,900.
We're wrapping up the show with some NFL prop bets right after Panel B.
You know, we were talking off the air that, you know, maybe this black polo had some meaning.
Always wear black to a funeral.
If you're watching here, I set up a nice candlelit vigil behind me. And in this time of mourning, I turn to the good book to try to, bring myself back to level, because I was a big backer of the Twins. They let me down. They let my bankroll down. So I thought I had to get some inspiration. So if you don't mind,
good book?
I'd like to read something here. This came from the good book. It's a passage I forget, but here we go. With each passing day in the garden of Target Field, the sun did shineth brilliantly, and the warmth of the verdurous moss did comfort the feet of Rocco Baldelli. In the season of the playoffs, the Twins exclaims, "We shall not fear the reaper, neither under the sun, nor the wind, nor the rain. But now the brood of the Yankees bestoweth the worst sins of thrice times upon the Twins, as they toiled in the fine fields with loss after loss after loss. And while the Yankees peasants will hath the want to celebrate victory, they will repent their desirable feelings with the looming shortcomings in the American League Championship Series. Hell hath no fury like a gambler scorned." Amen.
That was beautiful.
Thank you very much.
TLDR, don't start an Uber driver in Game 2 against a team that would have set the MLB record in home runs if they hit 2 more than the Minnesota Twins.
Still first place. Thank you for the time.
Regular season don't matter. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Was beautiful.
Thank you very much.
I often bemoan our lack of preparedness for this podcast, and that went above and beyond anything I possibly could have imagined.
Thank you very much.
I feel like that might help end my cold streak.
Doing that hockey. I'm Brendan Glasheen, and with the DraftKings Fantasy Flash, small slate in the NHL Wednesday night, a 3-gamer. That means 6 teams to choose from for your lineup construction. The Canucks have a high floor. It's Vancouver's home opener, and the matchup bodes well. You see the Canucks welcoming the LA Kings, who are on the second night of a back-to-back, coming off an overtime win at Calgary, and it's Jonathan Quick back between the pipes for LA. Quick lit up 6 Gs the other night in the opener, so his bounce-back season is off to a non-bounce-back start. Quick posted career worst in goals against average and save percentage in 2018. Now he's got to face the Canucks, who have relatively cheap salaries on this slate. Vancouver's first-line forwards are likely to be chalky, so pivot to their second-liners like Tanner Pearson, Bo Horvat, and or Josh Levo.
Final block of the program, and the 4 dudes who got our blood flowing at the start are back to cool us off. DraftKings contributors Reed Fowler, Jeff Ulrich, Julian Edlow, and Jerry Donabedian of RotoWire.
Looking at some prop bets for the season and week ahead. After another monster performance, Christian McCaffrey is plus 1,000 to be named NFL MVP. Do you like those odds, Jeff?
I mean, I don't even know what you guys are laughing at, but looking at the current situation, it is kind of interesting for McCaffrey. I really think it comes down to this: do you think Carolina Panthers can make the playoffs? And I mean, looking at their schedule, I think it's going to be close, but I think they have a real shot at getting to 9-7, possibly even 10-6. So, other players in his range, Russell Wilson, and then obviously you have Mahomes, who is the clear favorite right now. Mahomes is a little bit gimpy, has had a couple bad games. McCaffrey's obviously on fire right now, but I kind of don't mind this. I don't think Seattle is anything near a lock to make the playoffs. And even if Russell Wilson has a good season and Seattle doesn't make a playoffs, I think that really kills his chances. I think McCaffrey is definitely someone you can consider right now. Obviously, Mahomes is a favorite, but if that ankle bothers him or he has one more bad game, I mean, McCaffrey will definitely move up. So I actually think these are pretty fair odds to take a shot at McCaffrey.
Reed, plus 1,000 for Christian McCaffrey to be named NFL MVP. Do you like it?
Yeah, Jeff made really good points there. And look at what Christian McCaffrey is doing. He's doing it against really strong rush defenses as well. I mean, we see Tampa Bay has a renewed rush defense. Jacksonville has a really good rush defense as well. The Rams and so on and so forth. So he's doing it against really good teams. He's not doing it like the Patriots are and Tom Brady are beating up on really bad teams. And to go to what Jeff is saying about Russell Wilson, he is the closest one that can really kind of make sure that McCaffrey doesn't get it. But he's right. These teams have to win. The MVP has to be on a winning team. It has to be. There's no rule about it, but that's just how it's been over the past. And so, I mean, if you want to get this number, that's kind of what you have to do, right? You're going to have that Adrian Peterson type season, and that's what McCaffrey is doing. So I don't hate it.
Jerry, what do you think?
Well, I think the Jaguars are 32nd in run defense DVOA, so I've got to call that out first. Allowed the 4th most rushing yards to running back. But no, I think I don't think that McCaffrey really has any chance to win this. I think he'd have to come close to 3,000 scrimmage yards to do it. The last time we saw a running back win, and the only time in the last 10 years was Adrian Peterson. And his team promptly got knocked out of the playoffs, blown out in the first round by Aaron Rodgers, who had probably a stronger case that year anyway. I just think, look, it comes down to voting. And I just think, you've got still a handful of voters that are going to, any excuse they can find to not vote for a quarterback, they're going to take it. But the vast majority are kind of, on the analytics train to some extent, where they're just not going to vote for a non-quarterback. I mean, 2 years ago, Todd Gurley had a great year, 20 touchdowns, 2,000 yards. And he only got 8 votes. He got crushed in the voting by Tom Brady, who had a pretty standard 4,500 yard, 34 touchdown season. Something that's not that crazy for quarterbacks now. So I think it'll be a quarterback. I like Russell Wilson at plus 700 here. Way more than I like McCaffrey.
Jules, how do you feel about McCaffrey at plus 1,000 to be named MVP?
Yeah, I just can't bet on a guy that I have no faith is going to win the award, kind of like Jerry said. Russell Wilson at plus 700 is much more attractive to me, especially with how he looked in that Thursday night game against the Rams. That was one of the best games I've ever seen him play. And they keep running the ball so much. If Seattle ever changes their game plan to put the ball even more in Wilson's hands where it should be, that'll open him up to be even, a more attractive candidate for the award. Mahomes, we know what he can do. He's rightfully favored. Brady, obviously not putting up huge numbers, but what if this team goes undefeated and he has an average Brady season? Then you have to start considering it. Even 14-2, 15-1 for the Patriots, Brady's going to be in there and is a name that I would put above McCaffrey. So I'm looking over to the rushing yards leader. Dalvin Cook and Christian McCaffrey are both plus 250. Cook's been awesome, but McCaffrey is really ripping off yards. He doesn't have quite as good of a quarterback, even though Kirk Cousins, you can make the argument, hasn't been all that great. I think that McCaffrey at plus 250 to lead the league in rushing is something you can definitely consider me, and MVP, absolutely not.
I hear what you guys are saying about the quarterback thing, but I feel like if any year a running back was going to win, this is set up perfectly. Because like I said, Wilson's not winning if the Seahawks don't make the playoffs, in my opinion.
Well,
the Patriots are all about defense this year, so it really comes down to Mahomes, McCaffrey, and Wilson. So I don't know. I think it could be one of those weird years where McCaffrey gets in there.
All right, Julian, I'll start with you on this one. You can get positive money on the likes of the Bears, the Jaguars, Chargers, and Bucks to make the playoffs. Who do you think has the best shot out of that group? And be honest with me here.
I will be honest. I haven't liked the Bears all year. They're a team that I actually bet to miss the playoffs for plus money before the season. So I'm not going to reverse course there now and take them to make it. Out of the other 3 teams, Tampa's just too inconsistent. I can't back them. Plus, they're easily behind, Carolina and New Orleans in that division. So that means it comes down to the Chargers and Jags for me, which is a tough call. Jacksonville's, I think Indy and Houston are the clear-cut favorites to kind of duel out that division, which means Jacksonville has to either beat another one out for a wild card or 2 AFC South teams have to wind up in the wild card. That's going to be really tough. The Chargers have been brutal, but they've always been a really bad September team that kind of tends to come back throughout the course of the season and find itself. So if you ask me which one I think was going to be the better of these teams coming into the season, it would be the Chargers. And given their history of late starts, I guess I'll back them here tentatively and say that I probably wouldn't bet on any of these teams to make the playoffs, but if I had to, it would be the Chargers at plus 300.
Reed?
Yeah, going back to that Christian McCaffrey stat, it's excluding Christian McCaffrey that Jacksonville has given up only 9.5 fantasy points. But Jerry's right, Jacksonville, outside of that, really bad at rushing because that came heavily weighted from Christian McCaffrey. But if you go back to this, I'm actually with Emerson's team here in Jacksonville. If you look at the Chargers, they can never stay healthy. I think that Pouncey injury is going to hurt them. I know you have Hunter Henry coming back, but these guys can never stay healthy. We talk about special teams. they really haven't got anything going yet. I think when you get down to the playoffs, especially when you have these division matchups towards the end of the season, that's really going to hurt them. And if you look at Chicago, Julian mentioned it, man. They look. Matt Nagy doesn't have necessarily the right pieces put all together, and that division has always been tough. And so if you go to the wild card race and you don't win out the division, that's going to be tough out of the NFC. So for me, it's one of the two AFC teams, but give me Jacksonville.
Jeff, is there a clear cut in this group to you?
Oh, obviously it's Jacksonville. I mean,
Thank you.
Look, Chicago, Detroit and Green Bay have gotten better. I think they're clearly better teams than Chicago right now. And at the worst odds, I can cross Chicago off really easily here. Tampa Bay doesn't interest me much. I think Tampa Bay had their shot last week. If they had beaten New Orleans, they would have had a real shot at this. But with Carolina playing better, even at those odds, I just don't like it. It comes down to the Chargers in Jacksonville. Chargers just lost Mike Pouncey. I think they were due for some regression, quite frankly. I think they were just a little bit too hyped last year. And we're seeing what the kind of a mediocre team they are. I think the Jaguars, if you look at their schedule too, it's not just a bias thing here. They probably have the easiest schedule. They get the Jets and the Bengals in 2 of their next 3 games. If they somehow upset the Saints this week, we could be talking about them as leading the division here. And it's not that far-fetched. Jalen Ramsey might come back if he actually puts those trade demands down. Nick Foles coming back. I think from a pure long-form perspective, the Jaguars have the best shot of this group, and I don't mind those odds at all.
Jeff, I have a news alert for you. The Jacksonville Jaguars are 1.5-point favorites this week, so it wouldn't be much of an upset.
Jeff, though, I mean, real quick, come on. Hey, guys, I have a serious question.
I like facts, Emerson.
If Gardner Minshew, though, legit keeps winning, who knows how much longer Nick Foles is going to be out? Probably till like week 11. Do you keep Gardner in there, though? Or do you put Foles in there considering all the money you're paying him?
Who do you want to answer first there?
You play the better quarterback. That's probably going to be
Minshew in there.
Okay, Jerry, go ahead.
Got to keep him in there. And I mean, I like Jacksonville here too. As like, look at the AFC after the Chiefs and the Patriots. Like, I can't tell the difference between any of these teams. Not yet. We'll have a better idea in a few weeks. But yeah, I mean, you look at the Jaguars. The defense has actually been kind of bad, but they've got enough talent there to where we can at least see it getting up to maybe not the level of 2 years ago, but last year. Like, the offense has been shockingly good. Leonard Fournette's up at 5 yards per carry. Gardner Minshew's up near 8 yards per attempt. Every game they've played in has at least been close. And like Jeff mentioned, they've got the soft schedule ahead. I do think they're a little bit behind the Colts and the Texans in my eyes right now, but in a division where 9 games might get it done, 10 games probably will. Look at the Colts defense taking a big step back from last year, and the Texans are still just one of these teams where like they could be great, but they're only showing it once every few weeks. So yeah, I think looking at the odds here, with Chargers having all the injuries still, center going out, Pouncey, Russell Okung still not sure when he's going to be back, Derwin James. Like, the Chargers at full strength would be the best of these teams by far, but we're not going to see the Chargers at full strength till December, if ever.
Reed, looking at tomorrow night, the Giants are plus 260 to score first in their game on the road against the Patriots. Any chance that happens?
I mean, the blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while. So, yeah, it could happen, but, I mean, it's unrealistic. I mean, from last week to this week, the Patriots have gone down 2 spots, the third of least points allowed in the first quarter, and that's when it's going to happen, because once the Patriots get the ball, even with bad weather, shout out to Steve Buchanan, like, they're going to score. Like, look at the Giants really just don't have anyone. You saw all the tweets. You see the injury reports. They have no skill position players of notoriety playing in this game, and rightfully so. Why would you risk those guys coming back in this game that really, like, the coaching staff probably thinks that, yeah, you want to put a competitive product out there, but they really don't have a shot. And so this number is not bad, and we saw the Patriots kind of lay a stinker in that first half against Washington. So it's not out of the realm of possibility, but I wouldn't be putting money on this.
Jerry, any shot here?
I mean, if you're ever going to bet on a team that's like we've talked about these kinds of bets a few times. If you're ever going to bet on a team that's a 17-point underdog, sure, do it. Something like this. Maybe they score first. But no, I wouldn't do it because I can't. Short of a kick return or a punt return, I'm just like, how are they going to score? I mean, the Patriots have the best defense in the league. The Giants' offense isn't good even when it's healthy, and now it's basically Golden Tate, Darius Slayton, Daniel Jones. Like, I think the Giants' goal for this game is they're just going to hand the ball off to John Hellman, punt the ball, and hope to get out of there with Daniel Jones still alive. Like I don't even think they're going to make an honest effort to win this game.
Jeff, what do you think? Giants are plus 260 to score first. I mean,
didn't the Redskins hit this last week? Didn't they score first? Weren't they like up 7-0?
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, look, these bets are always live, but the reason these bets are crazy is because they're impossible to predict. You're basically like trying to predict a coin toss, how teams are going to come out in the first couple minutes.
Well, it's going to be either heads or tails.
I mean, I take the Giants here just because I'm never betting a team at like what -2, 3. What are the Patriots? I can't even see it on my screen. -300 or something. So I mean, sure, it's live, but sorry. I still wouldn't take it. I mean, is Daniel Jones going to might be throwing to himself in the fourth quarter of this game. That's how bad the Giants' depth chart is. So I just stay away. Probably just bet the Patriots point spread and wake up and you might have more money in your account. That's probably the way I'm looking at this game.
Jules, what you saying?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to open up with the point that Washington did take a 7-0 lead on the Patriots, but that's not going to happen most weeks, and I don't see it happening this week against what, given the injury report, is probably going to be the worst set of offensive weapons the Patriots have seen this season in poor weather against a rookie quarterback on a short week on the road. It just too much piles up. I'm not betting on the Patriots either because it's a ridiculous number like Jeff said. If you want anything here, the team total for the Giants, unfortunately, was 12.5 earlier on the day in DK Sportsbook. It's now 10.5. I don't care. I'll still take the under. The Giants aren't scoring more than 10 points in this game. That's where you're looking for a bet on this game.
Should be a big James White night, right? Yeah.
I just know he's on your fantasy team, so that's why you're hoping for that.
Sony Michel, 4 touchdowns. James White, 4 catches, 40 yards. Sorry, Emerson.
Yeah. It should be a Sony
Whatever,
Michel.
dude. That's 8 points.
Sorry, Emerson.
Last one here. Over 5.5 touchdowns in the Dolphins-Skins game will get you plus 220 odds. Jerry, you're all about this, aren't you?
You got it. I'm all about it. I mean, defensive touchdowns and special teams touchdowns count, right? They just need, as long as someone is standing with the ball in the end zone, that counts. Yeah, I don't think there's a great chance to hit it, but at plus 220 odds, absolutely. Like, who knows how this game's going to play out? How hard both teams are going to be playing, what kind of game plans we're going to see. It's going to be like a beautiful disaster. So yeah, maybe it ends up with 8 touchdowns for all I know.
Reed, wow.
Yeah. Enough said there. What's worse, right? Like how bad these offenses are, or how bad these defenses are. And I think it's the latter. I think these defenses are worse because we actually saw Washington with Case Keenum out there week 1 put up a lot of points against Philadelphia in that first half. So I'm thinking that they could potentially do that. We get Case Keenum back under center. He beat out Colt McCoy. But the only thing that worries me is that Callahan wants to run the ball into the ground, go back to the 1950s, and just hand it off to Adrian Peterson. That slows the game down, obviously. And if you can't get those defensive touchdowns, which is a solid point, that scares me a little bit. So I'm going to say no, that they don't get this number.
Julian, do they hit it?
No, they don't. I happen to believe that the offenses here are worse than the defense, maybe with the exception of Miami's defense, which is bad. But Washington's also so bad, I just don't see them really getting it together. If Case Keenum does play and Washington doesn't run the ball too much, I guess I don't mind Washington in this game. But there's just so many better games and spots to bet on that you don't need to do that. I think that it's not going to be a defensive game per se. It's just still going to be a bad offensive game, bad enough that we're not going to see 6 trips to the end zone here.
All right, Jeffrey?
The Dolphins have scored 2 touchdowns this year in 4 games.
Okay.
I will
hate to see it.
I will take it.
So
Their coach also does not like to challenge touchdowns when they actually score them, so that's a point against them as well.
Okay, so winter tryouts, is that 4:30 local time for you?
Do you have your own pads and cleats, Emerson?
Emerson will be there.
Is that even a
cleats
question?
And I don't need pads, bro. I played rugby
You're
in
starting
college.
at tight end. That's it. As long as you have it, you're starting at tight end for the Giants this week. That's it.
And that's what I was in high school. Tight end.
Very impressive.
Tight end and a safety, and I ran about a 4.40.
That was before college, right?
4.5.
What'd you run in college?
It's increasing. Yes.
Well, I gained like 60 pounds in college, so that so I slowed down a little bit.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, kind of bizarre, right?
You learn something new every day.
Do not take shots of Jaeger and eat Taco Bell at 3 a.m. in the morning, and you won't put on 60 pounds. Shocker.
That seems like pretty solid advice. And this is
You're
The
welcome,
Sweat.
everybody.
We give out solid advice like this every day at 6 p.m. And coincidentally, we will see you tomorrow at 6 p.m.
Okay, yeah, and don't forget the Houston Open is in Houston.
Houston Open in Houston. See you tomorrow at 6.